It's pretty radical intro music. I love it. Oh my gosh, it gets me pumped up every time. Anyway, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I'm really excited tonight to be talking to somebody that does a lot of the same things that I do, but so much more, so much better at it, in my opinion. How are you today, Taylor? From Maed Between the Pages.
Well, thank you for that too kind intro. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I know that my co-host of Page Doing has been on here before, PL Stewart. So, I watched your interviews many times, and I'm just delighted to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, PL is a guy that I get along with really well. I think that he's one of the best community guys out there. He does so much.
He does. I say over and over again, we don't deserve PL. And I mean it.
He's such a great dude. So you're assistant editor at, Before We Go blog. You do a Booktube channel, Maed Between the Pages, and you're a Spiff Box judge this year. You've got a lot going on. How does that feel? Like that's so much. How do you kind of keep that together?
Well, the question is it really together?
I get that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I added things slowly. So I started with my Booktube channel. It's definitely my baby. It's where my kind of home base is. And then I started doing, as I had mentioned, the page doing. That was the next thing I kind of added on. And then Beth Tabler from Before We Go blog asked if I wanted to be, part of the group. And I said, no question, of course, because I'd been doing reviews on Goodreads for a long time. And to me, it felt like it was just kind of a way to do it in a more professional capacity. And then from there, naturally, I became, and naturally is not the right word, through natural conversations with people, became an assistant editor. And then the Spiffbo thing is kind of the last thing that got added. I've been a Spiffbo judge for 3 years now. It's my third year.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I have so much respect for people who do Spiffbo judging on their own. Oh, hi, Chris. Because being part of a group, it's difficult enough to make sure that you get everything out on time, but people who do it on their own, mad respect. So I would say I'm just a box checker. I'm a scheduler, and I just kind of do what I can with all those things. But the fact that they were added slowly helps a lot.
I think that makes a lot of sense because I remember finding out about Spiffbo and just instantly kind of wanted to be a judge of that. And then you learn that there's 300 books. And all the judges that I've talked to, including you now, explaining kind of what you go through, it's a very busy schedule. And I love that. Me and my wife, we have 4 kids right now. So it's just, I don't think it's possible, but eventually I would love to, man. Mark, I think that Mark Lawrence is doing wonderful things and putting the spotlight on so many wonderful people with the Spiffbo competition. What does assistant editor kind of knows of? What kind of things do you do?
Yeah, so essentially we know how the back end of the website works. So Before We Go blog, as you know from being part of it, is a very collaborative process. People can post quite freely on the blog, but we're there for if people don't know how something works, if they want help with how to format something. Basically, we kind of help Beth because she can't answer everyone's questions. So we're kind of there for that.
And that makes so much sense because I'll tell you, as soon I write for, this, of course, but Before We Go blog is one of the blogs that I write for too. And it's a very, I did it because I'm not comfortable with it. It's something that I want to be better at, but I love doing it. But when I first started, because I've been writing with Fanfi Addict as well, and it's a different format.
Right.
So I specifically, John Morrow, he's like, look, we'll do a Zoom meeting and kind of run you through the steps. And he did. So I think kind of encompassing those things that he taught me, I'm putting that as something that you do quite a bit. and it's very helpful because somebody that's new to that form, the back end editor, a lot of people don't know what
Yeah.
that means. I didn't.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, why should you be expected to? You know, I think there's a beauty to having something be so open, but it does mean that there's a learning curve, which is why there's assistant editors to help people out, you know, because it's a lot.
yeah, it is. It's so much to learn. And to be able to teach, that's another skill all in itself. But I think Beth, I do have to say, has created such a beautiful website. Any like review that you see or cover reveal, anything, any article is just so gorgeous. It's also Grimdark magazine. It has a lot to do. They have a lot of things in common. I love both of them.
Yeah, I agree.
So I always like to ask, where did your love of literature kind of begin? Were you young?
Yes. Yeah, I was a voracious reader from when I was young. Always had a book in hand. I'm trying to think. I mean, when I was really young, I mean, if we're going to go way back, Arthur might be a big one. Like I was
Heck yeah.
dating myself here, but I was part of the subscription service where you got one every month. Loved that. I was obsessed. So I was kind of from the very beginning entrenched in books. But I would say that the big, cornerstone. Oh, hi, Belton.
Brian Bell, my guy.
And thank you for helping out with Spiffbo, by the way, Spiffbox. When it comes to like the cornerstone though, and what turned me into a reader per se, I was definitely part of the Harry Potter generation.
Me too.
Yep. Before I could read, my dad read the first book to me. And then I have such beautiful memories of even when I could read, we would always sit down and read the first book together. We never read it separately. And that's just a beautiful memory from my history, that really showed me how beautiful reading can be and that it can be shared too.
Absolutely. So I remember the first time I heard the first Harry Potter book, I was in Miss Cuvion's class in 3rd grade. I was born in 90. So those movies, those books, very much, I was a fantasy fan before I thought I was a fantasy fan, if you will, because my story doesn't start as far as reading super young. I was 29 when I picked up a fantasy book that was actually, pretty thick and fell in love with it. So those foundational stories that I hear all the time of those finding that love really young is always so cool because that's not my story. And most people do find it young. And I think that helps with the imagination. And I hope that I can do that for my kids.
For sure.
Other than J.K. Rowling, who were a couple of authors, or if it was books in particular, that had a huge impact on you to fall in love to the fantasy or sci-fi genre?
See, of course, when questions like this is a great question, but I forget anything I've ever read. So let's see, specifically for sci-fi or fantasy, I read a lot when I was young, and Harry Potter was definitely the main one. I did some Animorphs. I did a lot of those scholastic books.
That's it.
Yeah, lots of scholastic books. I loved Magic Tree House when I was really young. So I think I always kind of leaned toward the fantastical. Warriors was another one, like Warrior Cats.
Loved that's one I haven't heard of. I have to check it out now.
Yeah, I highly recommend it if you want something like it's the author, who I can't remember who the author is for the life of me, but she really goes in to this world. She develops it in the way that any big fantasy author would develop their world. It's very, very interesting. But I think I've just always kind of gone towards the fantastical whenever I picked a book up, even if there isn't an author that sticks out in my brain right now. I'm sure one will come up later.
Yeah, but out of the hundreds of books, thousands maybe, that you've read, I understand how hard see, my perspective is different because asking that question to me, I can probably name off every book I've read since I started reading because that was only 5 years ago. You know what I mean? So you guys that started young, I totally understand that that's a very hard question.
It's a good one though.
Thank you. So what was it that kind of gave you the drive, the passion to open a Booktube channel?
Well, I think, I always get confused when I actually started. What is time, right? It was either right before the pandemic or right after. I don't remember.
It is hard.
Yeah, but I think it was right before. And I discovered Goodreads a couple months earlier, and I was like, what? There's a place where you can like track the books that you read, because of the
Yeah.
problem we just talked about. I didn't remember what I'd read. I was like, there's a place where you can write this down and remember what you read? So that blew my mind. And then from there, I found Booktube, because, like Petrick and a bunch of other booktubers will link their Booktube in the reviews. So from there was just no going back. I was a lurker for a while. And then I found that I had more to say than would be in a comment. And I was like, maybe I should just start saying what it is that I want to say. I was nervous, as most people are, for the first one, but I think the advice that everyone gives that has a Booktube channel is you just have to do it. I mean, it's scary, but I sat down with my phone in a corner. I did not have a nice shelf set up. I did not know how to edit. Yep. There's no editing in that video. And I just did the Booktuber, newbie tag. And the lighting's awful. But you know what? I feel like if you don't cringe a little at your first video, maybe I haven't grown enough.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I keep mine up. I'll always keep mine up. And it is definitely, I remember my first, the author that I found, I'm going to definitely forget his name, because I'm that guy that just forgets everything. I'll remember it, and I'll tell you if it pops in my mind, but he lives in Athens, Ohio. And I'm like less than an hour from there. He's like, look, I'm not going to deliver, or I'm not going to send my book. I'm going to come meet you and this and that. And I gave, like, he was my first interview. And looking back at that, it was just like, I owe him so much. Like, he has to come back on the channel, because I had no idea what I was doing. But I agree. If you look back at your first video and nothing has changed, I don't know if you're, I think you have to notice some growth to kind of get burnt out, I think, if you don't.
Yeah. And I would definitely want to add a caveat to that. And when I say growth, I don't necessarily mean quality of your camera or quality of your microphone. I mean growth in some capacity. Maybe your reviews, you're getting better at articulating your reviews, or your vlogs have more flow to them. It's just some form of growth, and it doesn't have to be a monetary issue. Just to make that clear.
I totally agree, because the only thing, yes, Casey Sutton, my wife, there she is. She saved the day. So yeah, the only thing that's really changed, and I like that you pointed that out, because I've added the green screen. I have a bookshelf that's actually right in front of me, but it's not camera like ready. When we move into our new house, I'll have that. But just right now, the green screen is the upgrade, and adding a microphone. So whatever is right there for you to kind of improve however you can. I think that's wonderful, and to keep trucking, because we all start in those small capacity. At least as far as editing, I had no idea what I was doing. As far as questions, I had no idea what I was doing. And as long as you have that passion to keep growing, I think that you should keep with it.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. And we only, learn by making mistakes, as cliche as that is. You really do. Unfortunately, when you're in a platform like this, the mistakes can be public, like where you mess up on editing or something like that. But you know what? We've all done it.
It's like that knowledge is experience. Experience is knowledge. It makes total sense.
100%.
So when you started the channel, did you have any idea that you were going to do author interviews?
No, that was something that I was brought into. So Steve from Steve Talks Books is on a hiatus right now, so he hasn't been around for a while, but he's the one that started Page Chewing, the live interviews. And one time we had all read the same book, because we all talked behind the scenes. Myself, Lana, who no longer makes videos, but it was a group of us that were friends. And we read Gunmetal Gods by Zalmal Akhtar, which is right here.
I just won that in a competition signed. I can't wait to get to it.
Oh, congratulations. Oh, man, it is dark, but it's so good. I champion that book all the time.
That's my favorite part of a book.
Cosmic horror, too. Oh, chef's kiss. So good. So we all loved it, clearly. And we wanted to talk about it. Oh, thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. I just upgraded my camera a little while ago, so actually that means more than you realize. But
Mhm.
yeah, so we all wanted to talk about it, and Steve got Zamanul himself to come on the live. And we had such good chemistry between all of us. It was so much fun talking to the person who actually created this world. And after that conversation, I guess Steve had already asked PL to be part of Page Twoing, but then the two of them noticed kind of the flow of conversation between the three of us and asked me to be a part of it after that
Wow.
conversation. So I have Zamal Akhtar and Gunmetal Gods to thank for it. Of course, I said yes. And then kind of the rest is history from there.
Look at that. You know,
Yeah.
I love that kind of incorporation. It's a different story for you, and I was hoping so because that's so cool to hear. When I thought of myself starting a BookTube channel, I was like, I'm not going to take it too serious. I'm just going to do a couple book reviews every now and then. And I can't tell you the day that I was like, I'm just going to do a lot of interviews with really cool people. I can't tell you. I have no idea. I fell into it, and I just found myself reaching out to the people that I had the passion and the want to talk to. And as I'm sure you know, man, the authors in this space are just so giving and so nice and kind that I've gotten very few no's, and I'm sure you've had a similar experience. Am I right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, obviously it helps if you have an established platform to refer someone to, not like it has to be big, but like, this is kind of what I do. But I will say that very few knows. And I find most of the time, all you have to do is ask.
Yes.
And authors you would never imagine, they're like, yeah, we're like, why not? Like, some of the people we've talked to on the channel, it's still a pinch me moment when I think about it. I mean, I see books behind me on my shelf. I'm like, I've talked to that author. Like when I go to libraries and I see books of people I've talked to, it's so weird when the two worlds collide because they feel separate and then they're not actually.
Right. And it's something. So, and I think the reason is, not a lot of people reach out. I don't know. I'm just trying to guess. I don't really know, but having the courage to kind of reach out to people and kind of grab what you want and say, hey, I'm really interested in your books. I love your books. I'd love to talk to you. I would have a hard time saying no if I was that author. So that's just been my experience.
Oh, I agree. And I think the watershed moment for me when I realized that authors are just people was when we talked to Ken Liu, who is one of my all-time favorite authors. He is an incredible human, so intelligent. And I've gotten to talk to him, I think 3 times now.
Oh my
because
gosh,
the man
I'm
is
jealous.
just so generous with his time, and that was kind of the watershed moment for me where I was like, well, truly the worst they can say to me is no through a screen. It's not even like an in-person no. Like let's get this rolling.
And Lou, I have to say, because I would love to talk to him. I did reach out to him, and he said he has a book coming out sometimes the next so ever months. But I hope that we do get to connect because, like you, I really look up to him. He translates. He writes for oh my gosh, his writing is so incredible. So congratulations. I think that's amazing. Ken Liu. Wow.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I mean, it was my honor, really, the fact that he was willing to come on. But I'm very, I love that you talked about his translation, because I think that's something that not enough people discuss. As someone who does speak 2 languages, translation is a whole other animal. Like, even though I can speak 2, I definitely am not qualified to translate stuff. And he translates like fantasy worlds.
Yeah.
That's so much respect.
The vernacular is the difference in as English speaking people, our language is so just backwards, like in so many ways that I could just go down a rabbit hole. So to translate that to a different language, especially Mandarin, from Mandarin to English, those are like the 2 hardest languages in the world.
Yep.
Incredible.
Major
Brian,
respect.
I don't know the context. Hopefully, I'm not throwing this up for no reason because I do that all the time. Beard. You'd be hard pressed to interview a higher level author than you've already done in your first year with Janie Worth. Hey, I appreciate that, man.
Yes, Janie Wirtz is also a fantastic human. So generous with her time. You know,
she is, and she's like unapologetically Janie. I love it.
Yep.
She's like the queen of I do it the way that I want to do it, and I don't care what you say, right?
Yep, she has a life to show for it too. It's not just talk.
What is it, 11 book series that people are just I read the standalone. It's Ride Hell's Chasm. But I would love to start at book 1. In fact, I'm going to, because just the epic vastness. I'll tell you why. 1 second. Excuse me. Christopher Rocchio has shown me through sci-fi fantasy, the kind of the meshing of the two, that expanding. I'm going to sound retarded here, but just how far he could push my mind to comprehend. I never thought would happen through the written word. I had no idea. So to have an 11 book series, it's just incredible. So Janie Wirtz, that's an honor that I'm sure that not many people get to feel that way. Beth Tabler. I think I've been saying her name wrong this whole entire time. And Beth, you haven't corrected me. Is it Tabler or Tabler? I feel like I've been
inquiring minds want to know. I haven't been corrected either. And I've been around for longer than you.
Oh, it's so good to see you here. You're one of my favorite people.
Yes.
So actually you answered my next question. It was, how did page chewing get started? So you kind of graduated into it. I love that. Kind of grandfathered it in, if you will. How did P.L. Stewart become a part of it?
I wasn't privy to the conversation, but I'm pretty sure it was the same kind of conversation that Steve had with him just before he had it with me a couple months before. So they were doing, the two of them were hosts for a while there. And then that's when I joined the Gunmetal God conversation. So they were holding it down before. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
And Beth says, I was
table.
wrong then. There it is, Tabler.
Me
I got
too.
you.
Me too.
I said Tabler this whole time. And she's so nice that she didn't correct me. Oh, I love it.
Me either. Me either. Sorry, Beth.
So, all right. This you may have already had this author on. I mean, you speak of Ken Liu. Who is that bucket list author? If you could have anybody on, who would it be?
That is a really good question. So for a long time, it was Fonda Lee. If you can't tell, I have the Green Bone Saga behind me.
I can see it. Yeah, I can see it right behind you.
I have been lucky enough to have been able to do that. So I, when I say shifting goalposts, I don't necessarily mean higher. I just mean I'm looking to kind of expand into some more genres, possibly. Well, fantasy is definitely going to be our bread and butter through and through.
Sure.
But you know what? It's probably going to be the author of Six of Crows, Leigh Bardugo. Because we haven't done a lot of YA. She's huge. And while I have been open on my channel about the fact that some of her stuff is hit and some of her stuff is a complete miss for me, the stuff that hits really hits. Okay. And I would love to hear about her writing process. That's probably a series that I should have mentioned when it's something that inspired me or that I really enjoyed, was the Six of Crows duology. So good. It was back when I read YA a lot more frequently than I do now.
Sure.
But probably one of my most reread series.
Have you read Ninth House?
No, because I have that on
the bookshelf.
I don't like dark academia, so it's not the fault of Leigh Bardugo.
Okay.
But let's say, it doesn't click with me. I'm not a dark academia girly, so I feel like that would be not really a fair shot.
Sure.
For the book, but I know it's extremely popular.
Yeah. I bought it I've read a little bit of it. Every time I buy a book, I start it and then I kind of put it up till later. But I'm a fan of So not dark academia in the way that like Harry Potter is. Of course, that's
Mm.
not dark, but
Mm-hmm.
the very first fantasy, the book that got me here to talk to you today is Ordinary Monsters by J. Amiro,
Uh-huh.
which is just, ah man, it just sucked me in. It was like just the book I needed at the time, and it has
Mm.
somewhat of a dark academia feel to it, but so different at the same time. Have you read it?
Mm-mm. No, but I know exactly
Okay.
what you're talking about because every time I see the cover, I'm like, that looks good.
Yeah.
I have no
Uh,
idea what it's about, but it looks good.
so there's a dark academia feel to it, but it's kind of the back burner of the story.
Mm.
Instead of
Mm.
it's like Harry Potter, you go through the classes and you see it's a very I don't know. It's the talent. It's called the Talents trilogy. They have
Mm.
these different talents, I guess, and you could translate that to yes, yes. Dude. Oh, hold on, I gotta grab. So the book that got me in to fantasy, I was lucky enough to grab that arc, Beth. Look at that. I cannot wait to get to it. I'm
God,
like a
that's
kid in a candy
pretty.
store. Yeah, it's called Bringer of Dust, and it
Mm.
comes out in September. But yeah, it just totally stole my heart. It did because of the characteristic. Like these two characters are very young, Marlowe and Charlie, and they're so innocent and sweet, and they get pulled into this world that they just don't deserve. And you kind of just, I don't know, you fall in love with these characters. So
Mm-mm.
it
I'm
just
also a
it took me.
character-based reader, so you sold me.
Yeah, it's so good. I highly recommend Ordinary Monsters. And it's this is debut novel. It's really good. Um, so I love that. So
Some people just have a talent, you know?
yeah, absolutely. So where
Mhm.
are you? I was always curious. Where are you from, and how did you end up in over in Japan?
Well, I'm from the States, so I'm from
Mhm.
the DMV area in the States, and I've been very lucky, very blessed to have traveled a lot in my life. Uh, when I was younger, for my dad's job, or he was retired now, but he worked at NASA, and he was
Oh
working with
wow!
JAXA. So they had a project together. So he was traveling to Japan very frequently, and I decided, Mom and I decided one time we're like, let's go with him. So we hitched a ride on that business trip when I was like in third grade, maybe.
Oh wow!
And yeah, and so that was my first huge experience like outside of the States. And something about Japan,
Oh,
to my little third grade brain, it fried it in the best way. Everything was so different. Everything was so interesting. Everything was so new to me, and I loved it. I didn't like the food at the time because fish still had heads on it, and I was not
right.
having
Yeah.
that. There's a couple
Yes.
embarrassing stories of me refusing to eat stuff. Sorry, Mom. But but overall, I had a fantastic time here, and it just kind of stayed in my brain. So again, I've been lucky to do a lot of travel in my life, but when I was in high school, I felt Japan kind of calling me back. So my school had never had a study abroad program, and I was like, "We're going to change that today." So
Nice.
I did a bunch of like summer school, made sure that I could graduate on time, came back here, and then at that time, I was serendipitously placed where I live now, which is Fukuoka, in the
Uh-huh.
southernmost island of Kyushu, excluding Okinawa, of course. And it's not a big touristy town. Excuse
Uh-huh.
me. It's not a big touristy town, but it's a very good place to live. It's got mountains, oceans, like
Oh,
right nearby. It's got absolutely delicious food. I would argue the best food in the country. That's throwing shots at some people, but
I'm
I
sure.
just stand by it. So I was just very lucky to be placed here. And then, of course, after high school, back to the States. Went to university, got a job, worked for a while in insurance and in a speech therapy office, things like that. And then again,
Okay.
I felt that call from this
Mhm.
country. Don't know what it is. So I decided it was time to move back, and I did. And then this time around, I met my husband. So
Oh, that's amazing.
here I am 8 years later.
That is so cool. If there was one place that I've like preached to my wife that we have to take our like, if we get to go to another country, it is absolutely Japan. Like we're going to
Got a
see
free
the
tour
cherry
guide.
blossoms. I'm coming to eat the food. My wife, she's a little more picky, but I'm going to eat everything. Yes.
I
think
see
that's
that as a
incredible.
challenge. I got her.
That's awesome. Oh man. So it's the mountains in Japan. I don't know, what the mountains that snow covered.
Well, it really depends. Obviously, Fuji is snow covered, but not Fuji. But down near Fukuoka, we don't get that cold of winters, so
Okay.
snow is a rarity here. And the type of mountains here are very different. The best way I can probably describe it is my Japanese friends, when they go to America, the first thing they say is, the sky is so big. And at first I was like, it's the same. Of course it's big. It's the sky. But when you do live here and then go back to America, you realize the sky here is almost always cut off by a mountain because there's so many of them. There's so many mini mountain ranges. So you don't get that horizon view often at all.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So it's a very different type of mountain, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Yeah. People also say that, America has big nature, whereas Japan has like lots of small nature. Is kind of the way that people talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. I think that does make sense, and I hope to make it more and have it make more sense because I want to travel to my cousin. He lives in California, and he works for he does something as far as like stocks and internet or something like that. But him and his wife does anime and like creates games, and they always get to go for free, like back and forth to Japan. And just the pictures they take, the food they're eating. I said, that is absolutely the destination. I need to go
of the
one time.
Tickets.
Right?
Woo,
yeah.
The price has never recovered after COVID. So a nightmare. Thank God for miles, travel miles.
What is the biggest thing you would say as far as culture is different, like your day to day between the States and what you experience in Japan?
The biggest? That's a very good question. I can think of so many small ones. I'm trying to think of one of the biggest ones. Well, I'll just talk about one that's been on my mind recently, which is here, religion, as we think of it in the States, isn't really a topic. It isn't really a thing here. I say this because I recently read a book from the library here about Shintoism. And Shinto, there's two main religions here, Shinto and Buddhism. And while in the past there was a lot of bloodshed between those two, no love lost, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they coexist in daily life in a way that I find extremely interesting because I studied anthropology and linguistics in university. So I love, my anthropology heart is like, why do humans do what we do, when we get together? So I've always found it really interesting how a lot of things here, daily life, are steeped in Shintoism or Buddhism. But when you ask someone, why do you do this? Or what's the reason for this? They're like, it's just what we do. And so something that's been on my mind a lot recently is it's not a fraught topic. Like if you just ask someone, like, do you believe that there's actually, kami all over the place for Shinto? And they're like, maybe, I don't, it's not this big question. So that's something that I've really noticed a big difference because when I went home for about a month and a half in the spring. And it was just something that I had to readjust to kind of being careful with and handling carefully that topic. Yeah. Whereas here, you don't really have to do that with most people.
What I hear, this is what I hear. In the United States, people find nowadays every single way to be divisive. Any single thing that they can that you disagree with me, I disagree with you. It's like nothing but divisiveness. And one of the things that I don't deal with, that I don't like divisiveness. I love people, and like if you're finding a reason to like separate yourself from me or what I believe in, because look, we're all people. We have our personal feelings and what we believe in. And who am I to judge anybody? And I feel the same towards me. Like, I hate that about some of the things in America. I hate that there's so many topics that are divisive. So I think that having religion, especially where you're at, not being that thing to keep you and me apart, or my friends and your friends apart, is kind of beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, the grass is always greener, right? So every country has their own divisive things.
Sure.
But in this particular instance, I do prefer the way that Japanese people are willing to kind of go with the flow of things in that regard. So that's just been on my mind recently because I recently read that book.
Yeah.
But
no, that makes sense.
And then a lighter one might also be, I would say, food culture here is very different.
How so?
Different in the sense that, well, portion sizes are one. And also,
smaller?
Much, much smaller.
Yeah, of course. America's
fat. And a very common style of eating is at an izakaya, a Japanese pub, where you all get together. It's like tapas style. So everyone shares from a big plate.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have a small plate, and that makes it so you can take less on your plate. And then before you know it, you don't really feel like you need to take more than that. So that's that sharing aspect. Although there is one annoying part of that where, since it's shared, manners are huge here. You do not disrespect your elders or superiors and in the company. So, but there are some minute rules that come with that. So if you have the last piece on the plate, who's going to take that last piece? Many people will die before being the person that takes the last piece from the plate.
Oh my gosh, my stupid camera died, by the way. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Plug it back. Can you still hear me here? Can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, well, we'll deal with that for a second. I apologize, guys.
Fine.
I didn't plug my stupid ass camera in. So what I hear from that is like, American portions are ridiculously large. Like, you go to Texas or you go to Florida, and that's like, those are eating destinations. I feel like that's not a thing where you're at now. Something that I can't eat is super spicy meals. Is that a Japanese culture thing? Is it super spicy?
Oh no, you'll be at home here. People can't handle spice even a little bit.
Good.
Like the Indian restaurants here and the Nepalese restaurants and all of that, they're like, what level do you want? You want Japanese 0 or like actual 0? Because Japanese 0 is like negative level spice. So you'll be at home here.
It's incredible. 100%. Like, I'll watch these like food documentaries, and wow, that was fast, by the way, guys. I've never had my camera charged back that fast. I remember I was talking to Mark Lawrence, and it died. I was right during Mark Lawrence, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Anyway, spice is not for me, and it's like some of the things in America that they classify as mild. I'm like, come on, this is medium to hot to scorching, if you ask me. So I'm glad to hear that if I ever do make it to Japan, they're not going to trip me.
No, the scale will be perfect for you.
All right.
And I did just want to make a comment real quick that there are eating destinations here for sure.
Oh,
that's one thing that.
Let's hear it. Yes, I'd love to hear that.
Well, when I say eating destinations, I mean that each area has their own specialty, and people will travel to that area for that specialty. So Fukuoka is known for a specific type of ramen called tonkotsu ramen, which is like a pork bone base. Tokyo has shoyu, which is soy sauce base. So in the States, I think we usually get soy sauce base. There's also miso based from Hokkaido. So different regions have different types of foods, and you can travel to the center to get like the best form of that food. So that's also a part of the food culture I wanted to mention that's different, is people travel here for specific food all the time.
So I'm terrible with geology. Where you're at, is it separate from, is it somewhat like a archipelago, or is it part of the main island,
It's
or
part
the main country?
It's part of the main one. So there's like 4 main islands. Hokkaido, the northernmost. Then you have Honshu, which has Tokyo and all of the main like tourist destinations. Then
Mm.
Shikoku, which is a tiny island everyone forgets about, in between Honshu and where I live, which is Kyushu. And then there's Okinawa, which is separate and not connected. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't know which one. I would have to do some research. Now I know Tokyo's super like when I picture Tokyo, it's like Times Square, right? There's so
Mm.
many like TVs and screens and just incredible amounts of people and food and dancing and all that
Mm.
stuff. And honestly, one or 2 days there, I think I would enjoy. Um, any more than I live in the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains, so it
I
would be
see.
it would be very different for me because
Mm-mm-mm.
everybody knows everybody around here. But I would like to experience it. Um,
Yeah.
and then I would
Well,
like to
you'll.
experience the culture, the country. I would like to see
Mm.
Mount Fuji, uh, like experience the man. When I picture a snow covered mountain, I don't know what it's
Mm.
called, but where you kind of go in and have dinner, and you're sitting on the floor, and um,
Hmm.
you have the fire in front of you, and you're kind of
Hmm.
sharing an intimate meal.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but that sounds very cool to me.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm also a mountain girl, so you're in good company here with that.
Mm,
Um, Tokyo is fantastic to visit. You'll never get bored, but
mm,
I personally couldn't live there.
yeah.
I prefer Fukuoka because, like I said, it's not really a tourist destination. Like when people say, "What should I do when I come there?" I'm like, "Well, we have a couple small places, but it's a fantastic place to live, specifically." So.
So you have children.
Yes, I have a daughter.
I
She
love
is
that.
just one, just turned one.
That's
So,
amazing. Me and my wife
yeah.
have four, so we're crazy. We don't even
Look,
know what's going
I
on.
I got the one and it's a lot. The
Uh,
respect. I have so much respect.
well, it just kind of leads into my next question. In the United States, we have like Disneyland and Great
Mhm.
Adventure and Busch Gardens and Epcot, stuff like that. Now, are there tourist attractions like that, for locals that you can go to roller coasters, water parks, stuff like that?
Oh, for sure. Definitely more towards the Tokyo region. In Fukuoka, there used to be like a space, it was called Space World, but it shut down.
Okay.
um, so we don't really have those kinds of attractions so much in this area, but in the country, absolutely. Most people will travel up to the Tokyo area to go to
Now,
those.
is that really expensive? Or is that somewhat reasonable to
I
say, hey, I want
I
to go to
went
Tokyo?
well, I went to Tokyo Disneyland, and in my memory, it wasn't like extortionate prices, but it
Okay,
was, like you're paying for Disney, so
sure.
you could. It's not cheap,
No, okay, that
but
makes
it
sense.
wasn't extortionate. No,
I know I'm
and
kind of going
also
crazy with the questions, but it was
that's
fascinating to me.
that's okay. It's okay. I love talking about where I live, so it's fine.
Oh, I love it. So awesome. I love that culture difference. That's probably the coolest thing. Like doing this booktube thing and talking to authors. I get to talk with people from different countries, and
Mm,
I totally nerd out on that because, well, I think it's important. I think culture is important. I think that daily life is important, and how somebody's life differs from mine. Kind of
mm,
learning about that is, I don't know, it's kind of eye opening, and I just really enjoy it.
yeah,
So
I agree.
obviously, reading and reviewing and stuff like that is part of your hobbies. But do you have any other hobbies that you enjoy?
Yeah, the main one would probably be weightlifting. I've done that
Okay,
for a really long time. Going in and out of the gym depending on the phase of life that I'm in. But before I moved here, I was really into Spartan races. Did lots of obstacle course racing. I was a soccer player for 14 years. I haven't played in a long time. Don't show up and tell me that I got to do a scrimmage, guys. But
14 years is a while.
yeah, from a very young age. But so I guess I've always liked to exercise and work out, and what that looks like later in life for me is weightlifting in the gym. So after having a baby, it took a while to get back into the flow of all of that,
Sure.
but I think we're getting there now. So that would be
That's
my other
awesome.
big hobby, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can relate to that in the fact that I played football for the around the same amount of time that you played soccer. And
Mm,
now, don't get me wrong. Look, I'm not going back in that game anytime soon because it's a destroyer. You know, the
yeah.
knees, the neck, the all that. It just goes bad. But
Mm,
I do miss it. I do miss the Friday Night Lights. Uh, but it's good to have the character that sports kind of uh, build in an individual. It keeps you accountable. You work as a
yeah.
team. I think that
Mhm.
uh, it has a really positive effect on a young man or a young woman. Um,
I agree,
so to
100%. In the way that you mentioned, like travel helps you
mm,
understand other things. I think sports is important for that as well. And also, something that I've found it's done for me is allowed me to have a connection to my body in a way that I know it's connected to my mental health. In a
oh
way that it might take people longer to kind of connect those two things. But I find that if I'm feeling stressed or anxious or whatever, and I think about, have I worked out recently regularly? The answer is almost always no.
mm,
So that connection has been just so quintessential for
oh,
my life.
I love that. And you know what? That has an impact on me because I'm a guy that I have not like hit the gym in a long time.
Mm,
I have not, and I do remember a time, you know, where practicing and keeping myself accountable. They say responsibility uh, builds self confidence. That's one of the things that I've heard lately. I watch a lot of podcasts. I'm a sucker for them. And I really agree with that. And you can translate that in so many ways, whether it's for your job or sports or, whatever it is for you personally. But I totally agree. Um,
oh,
what do you
for sure.
currently,
Go
what do you
ahead.
currently,
Sorry.
no, I always tell people there's a lag. So if I accidentally interrupt
Okay.
you, I'm so sorry.
Not
Um,
at all.
so what are you currently reading?
Well, because I forget things, I prepared. Look at me coming
All
prepared today.
right.
So I was like, I need visual aids so I remember what I'm reading. Yesterday, the book that I just finished, so it's fresh in my brain, is On the Origin of Species and Other Stories by Bo Young Kim.
Oh, wow.
It's a translated Korean collection of short stories, sci-fi short stories.
Sci-fi.
And
I
Kim,
love that.
yeah, and Kim is like a rising star, kind of. Well, star has already risen, I guess, but is now being translated. I know that she has some other works translated as well, but I tabbed the crap out of this book because I have thoughts, but I don't. I'm trying to gather them still since I finished it yesterday. But this book explores kind of the core of humanity. What makes
Mm,
us different from other species? Are we really different? Our
mm.
transformative nature. Um, what Kim does is she takes the speculative future aspect of sci-fi and flips a lot of it on its head in ways that really shocked me. I had never seen
Oh,
anything like that before. So you think you know what you're getting into, and then you don't know at all. And then the other aspect of this book that really struck me is almost all of the world building and sense of place is created through dialogue. There's almost no exposition.
oh, wow. That
So
is unique.
yeah, so you have to infer what's happening from what's said or what is often not said, which I also
Wow.
find really interesting because Eastern Asian culture is very like that. You have
Yeah.
to infer what has not been said and then act accordingly. And I was fascinated by that aspect of her writing. So highly recommend this, honestly.
Okay. I read it. Yeah, I wrote it down. Definitely.
The last story effed me up. Like it's gonna stay with me in a way that I'm not so happy about because it's stuck in there and I can't get it out, but it's so good.
I
um,
have to check stuff like, that's kind of an area that I haven't explored much. There's so many of those
mm,
areas, though. Oh my gosh. Starting late like I did, there's, so many foundational series and books and uh, stuff like that I hear all the time. Even like The Hobbit. I have
mhm.
saved The Hobbit for when my kids are old enough to kind of understand what I'm reading. So that will be the first time I read The Hobbit. Um, Now I've read, some Adrian Tchaikovsky, some James Rollins,
Hmm.
obviously a lot of self-pub books.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the the author recommendations, as far as their foundation, of that, what a lot of authors say is their foundational
Mm.
series, I have not read. So Dune,
Yeah.
um, Wheel of Time, I've read 3 books. Uh,
Well, I mean, if it makes you feel any better as someone who started quote unquote early, I was in my lane for a long time, and YouTube has really, Booktube specifically, has really helped me branch out and see other things. I didn't read sci-fi when I was younger. I was tried and true fantasy, right? So
mhm,
I also haven't read Dune. I'll air out my dirty laundry. I haven't read Wheel of Time.
mhm.
Haven't read Malazan yet.
Oh, Malazan, yeah.
So I have done Lord of the Rings, that's check that box, right? I have read that and thoroughly enjoyed it when I was younger. So there are some foundational ones that I've read, but I feel like there's also a time and a place for taking on giants like that. And
Yeah.
they deserve the attention of the correct time, if that makes
Oh,
sense. Like I'm not going to force myself to read Malazan when I'm not in the right headspace for it. Like I'll get to it,
you're making a huge point by it really kind of hits home with me because I've started Gardens of the Moon and I like it. I think
Mhm.
that Malazan will be a and it's kind of like the Christopher. I'm a huge Christopher Rocchio fan, and I'm only through
Mhm.
book 1,
Right.
which is Empire of Silence, and I'm starting Howling Dark, and I'm liking it. I'm loving it, and I just
Mm.
think that sometimes, but I'm not reading that right now. But that doesn't
Mm-mm.
mean that it's not going to be amazing for me. I
Oh,
just
I agree. Yeah.
recognize that right now may not be the time for that book or that series. When you find yourself, uh, I don't know, if you start the book and it's like, what, I'm really enjoying it, but at the same time, this is a complex story.
Yeah.
I'm going to save it and give my chance to enjoy the chance to enjoy it when
Oh,
the
I
time is
agree.
right.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not a dig on a book if you set it down for a moment,
Yeah,
It's just we only have so much time and you have to make sure that you're doing the books justice that you pick up. I did just want to make one comment though. I see a comment down here that says Darwinian, which I think is probably referring to this. And I would say there is a Darwinian aspect to it, but I would say also Asimovian. There's a lot of AI and robot postulation in here as
oh yeah,
well.
Ithra,
So I
she's
just
awesome.
wanted to answer that. Yeah. Just wanted to
Ithra probably has filled my TBR with 100 books that I haven't read yet that I plan on reading. She is a gangster.
TBR, like I have a couple people who murder my TBRs as
Yeah,
me being one of
dude.
them. Every
Ithra's
time
one of
she's
those
around,
people
I'm
for
like,
me.
stop talking. Okay, because like my TBR is way too long already. Like you can't be doing this
Yeah.
anymore.
I get it. Oh man,
Yeah.
Ithra, thank you for being here. Also,
Mm.
Britton, what's up, my guy? How you doing,
Hey.
man? It's good to see you, brother. Jim McCleary, fear the beard. Good to see you, brother. Um, yeah, man. All right, so you're currently reading,
Well, that's the one I just finished.
right?
And then what am I currently reading? I should put hold on, just give me 1 second. I'm okay sharing about things in Japan, but not necessarily the local library I go to. So I'm just covering the sticker.
Sure.
But I'm reading The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin right now, which is the third book in
Oh, the third book. So
Broken Earth
you really
trilogy.
enjoy her writing.
Yes. So this is a very interesting series for me because I've read basically one book a year. And I think that her writing is absolutely fantastic. But how do I put this? Her books are not enjoyable for me in the sense that I read it and I'm like, that was fun, or
Mm,
that I enjoyed the feelings that brought out of me. I think they make me think.
yeah.
They are incredibly intelligent books. And I really enjoy the skill of her writing and how she plays with time. She plays with
Mm,
time and references a lot. So I thoroughly enjoyed the series as a whole. But when I'm reading the book, it's not like
Yeah.
This is so fun, you know. So
Yeah.
it's a really hard thing to describe, but I can see why it's won all of the awards that it has. And I also find that I can't put it down, even though I'm not like, I love the feelings this is bringing up for me. I still want to know what happened. Like, it's compulsively readable in that way. So I'm blowing through this book. I started it yesterday and I'm 50 pages in. So
Oh, great. Now,
yeah, so
do you read outside of the fantasy or sci-fi genre?
I do sometimes.
My wife is a
I
huge Frida McFadden fan. Do you read any like psychological murder mystery
no.
type of thing?
Sounds up my alley, though. Don't know
Oh
that
my
person.
gosh,
But
she is
up my
like
alley.
my wife is like, oh, she's obsessed with her.
All right, let me write that down. Hold on.
Frida McFadden. I believe she's an independent author too, but she sells millions of books. Like, it's incredible.
Oh.
But she's twisted, like sincerely twisted.
Yeah, one of the most twisted books I ever read was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter.
Ooh. I'll have to tell her. I'll have to tell her. She's probably listening.
Oof.
I'll have to tell her.
If she wants effed up, read that book. Like, you
likes
don't think
it.
it's going to go there, and then it goes there. So
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll definitely tell her about
I
that
do
one.
dabble, but I do
Good.
dabble. Yeah. Mhm.
You know, one of the I don't know exactly what you would call it. Maybe thriller or horror, psychological. Is that Riley Sager book? I'm looking at it. The Only One Left. It's I haven't read it yet. I just it's on my shelf, and we bought it when it was first come out. But dabbling in other genres isn't something I've done for a while. But I think I plan to do soon because you somewhat I don't get burned out on fantasy, but sometimes it just feels good to kind of get out of what you're used to, right?
I
And
agree.
experience something a little different.
Yes. I think for me, I've been remiss in this whole conversation not mentioning Brandon Sanderson. I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. I've read all the Cosmere.
Okay.
They're on the one shelf above where you can't see it, but I
Awesome.
have the whole collection. So I agree, though, because I discovered him from my local library. I hadn't heard of him before. I was new to Booktube, so I was living under a rock at that point, and so I saw The Way of Kings in the library, and the rest is history. And I like dived straight in. But I remember after finishing the Cosmere, I was like, I need a minute, to like not be in fantasy, because it's just a lot of fantasy to take in, and I loved every second. But yeah,
It's like
so
a pull
at
back
that
to
point,
real life.
right? And so after that, I went through a huge thriller phase where I was like devouring thriller audiobooks. So I completely understand when you say it can be your home base, but sometimes you just need to step out for a little bit.
Yes. So speaking of real quick, if you don't mind, what are a couple thrillers you throw at me that you're like, yeah, dude, try it out?
Well, this is a couple. Let me look at Goodreads. Hold on, because
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
that there were a couple that stuck with me. One of them being The Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter.
Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter.
Karen Slaughter has a lot of books. They're kind of like tangentially related sometimes, but you can read them as standalones. She's a pretty big author in the thriller genre. Hang on.
We're live. So
one that I hated and do not recommend is All the Missing Girls. Do not recommend that one. Speaking of like, the author was trying to do like a timeline thing, and it just, in my personal opinion, did not work. So that sticks out in my head because I remember not liking that one.
For sure.
But let's see.
I tried Dune not too long ago. I will try it again. I'm not saying that this is forever. Anybody listening, I DNF'd it just because. Well, there's point of view changes during like every during normal paragraphs that it just confused me. I'm not gonna lie. His prose is very specific. I understand why it's one of those books that have been made into movies and whatnot, and I love the movies, but I hope that it grows on me. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, this isn't exactly a thriller, but as I scroll back to where the thrillers are, I did just pass by The Black Tulip, which kind of has like mystery-esque vibes to it. It's a by Alexandre Dumas. It's a classic.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's short, but that one I thoroughly enjoyed more than I expected to. Like the mystery aspect of it, not quite a thriller. God, how long ago did I read thrillers? Good Lord.
You know, Tori from Tori Talks was talking about
Mhm.
a book that I can't wait to get into. And it's a classic. At least it looks that way or sounds that way. White Fang.
Yeah, with the wolf. I say with the
Yeah,
wolf because that's all I remember because I read it as a kid.
yeah. It's like the point of view of a wolf, and that's about all I know about it. And she said
Yeah.
it's like one of her favorite, like most impactful books ever. So I'm on board.
Yeah. So this is kind of horror adjacent, but
All
The
right.
Whisper Man.
Oh, The Whisper Man by Alex.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
that book is woo. Is
Yeah, it's
excellent.
good.
The ending of that book haunted me. I don't know how you felt about the ending of that one, but I was like,
Yes,
ooh.
it did. It absolutely. It was one of the very first books I ever read. Like when I got into
Mm.
reading.
Mm.
Definitely good.
Yeah, that one. I also, well, this one I gave 3 stars to, but When No One Is Watching. That one had its time in the spotlight. It's more like it's got a social commentary aspect to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then one that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, what that I really enjoyed was Darling Rose Gold. It's Munchausen by proxy thriller.
Okay.
So like the mom, I don't know if you know that condition, but where the mom pretends that their child is sick
Yeah.
in order to get
Munchausen
attention.
syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a
So
great read. Holy crap. I've never read anything like that, but I know the syndrome. But yeah, that would be
yeah.
incredible.
Yes, that audiobook for sure. So it looks like I did thrillers and like horror mixes. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
just while we're on the topic of kind of mysteries, one that popped up that I'm reading a next one in this series soon is the Honjin Murders. This is also a translated Japanese, like
Oh, wow.
Sherlock Holmes, basically.
Oh,
It's
wow.
basically the Japanese version of Sherlock Holmes, yeah. And so there's the detective Kosuke Kindaichi who is called in when things get weird and figures it out from all the
Things
small
get weird.
details. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I definitely wrote all those down. I cannot wait. So
yeah. Thanks
that's
for
probably.
thanks for waiting for me to scroll. To
Oh my
check out
gosh! Of course. Oh my gosh! Of course. It's absolutely one of my favorite points of like talking live to people is getting those real life recommendations, and it's fascinating to me. So we've got a lot of the culture in Japan. I loved learning about that. Your hobbies, I loved learning about that. Your current reads, loved that. So, what are you currently working on as far as your channel, and kind of what is to come?
Well, let's see. Recently, I guess not recently, but something that has taken a bigger focus on my channel has been my reading vlogs and my Japan life vlogs.
Awesome.
So those are combined into one. So I talk about the books I'm reading and then my life here. And while those were kind of something that I did in between big wrap ups and stuff before, they're becoming more bread and butter-esque.
Okay.
And I'm really enjoying editing those and developing those into their own kind of thing. And it seems to be based on feedback, something that a lot of my subscribers like. And I recently just went on a mini vacation to the mountains this past weekend. So there's one coming out that has that in it. So you'll see a lot of those vlogs. And then, as I'm sure you know, having 4 little ones running around with just the one little one, that really changed when I'm able to film and read. And that kind of schedule hasn't really gone back to what it was before and probably never will. So
Oh, yeah.
while I am reading a lot, my reading speed and timing is a bit different. So I'm thinking, rather than doing the strict kind of like wrap up and TBR schedule, doing more discussion-based videos, because I love long-form content. I love talking, and I love having comments where people say what they think, not just say what they're reading. So I'm thinking more discussion.
So obviously, you know this. You do interviews. Out of the many interviews I've done, over like 150, you're very good at doing interviews. You give great answers. So that's not something that I would say definitely go for that. You do wonderful. And yes, something that I have to say, once you have children, oh my gosh, if I try to start a book, are you kidding me? The only
Mhm.
reading I get done is at nighttime, and
Yep.
it's when the kids are asleep. And if I've learned that if I try to read during the day, I'm just gonna like get angry. Yeah, right? Because hey, daddy,
Yep.
daddy this, daddy that,
Yep.
daddy this. Hey, will you give me a diaper? Hey, will you give me a bottle?
Yep.
It's like it
Yep.
does not work. But
No.
it's beautiful. It
Even
is beautiful.
it's a choice that I made and I would make again. But I'm still learning kind of what works. And I agree that if I read during the day, she can have all of the books in front of her. She wants my book
Yeah,
in her hands. And because mommy has it, right? So
it's the attention.
during the
Yeah.
day, if it's in her sight, it can't happen.
Uh,
So I'm learning how to balance. Do I want to read so that I can make content, or do I want to edit the content that I have made? Right? Or do I want to answer the emails for the future live content? Right? So there's like,
yes.
and I got to pick one of those things because I'm
And
tired, and I want to sleep.
yes. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes. The relation. I'm feeling so much that yeah, 100. My wife is screaming in the other room like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you do with when you have a kid is like you don't like you hear your parents say this or you hear your grandparents say that. There's no way you can honestly like attempt to understand what it's like until you have one. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is real, but I think you're wonderful at doing what you do.
It's very
Long,
kind of you. Thank you.
oh, of course, I give credit is where credit's due, and you're doing wonderful. And what a better co-host, right? PL Stewart. Just I think you guys are wonderful together. Um,
Thank you.
uh,
That really
so,
means a lot.
oh well,
Especially
I'm
coming
glad
from a fellow interviewer, because that's another thing that you don't know until you do it. Interviewing is a skill,
it
people.
is.
I have to, you
It
work on
is
it.
because like
I
you'll have those guests that aren't interview. I don't know how to state this, but some people aren't good at doing interviews.
mhm, mhm.
And but you still
Yes,
want to promote them with their books and this and that. You have to find a way to put that weight on your shoulder and kind of lead the way and come up with the answer or the questions. And if they don't give long answers, you have to kind of fill in the gaps. And it definitely is that type of skill. Uh,
it is.
it,
It is a skill, and you have to think fast and on your feet. So I give you a lot of respect for doing what you do, and as often as you do it, because it takes a lot of prep too. I just want to put out to people watching this later. It takes a lot of prep, a lot of
mm,
work, and I would say that for me personally, I have experience as a teacher as well, many years as a
mm,
teacher. And that has been instrumental in helping me
I'll
learn how
bet.
to interview people. Because when you're a teacher, you have to get people talking
Mm,
and engaging. And it's
yeah,
just a learned skill. So I
it
just want to do
is.
a shout out to all the interviewers out there. You're doing great.
Shout out
I
to
see
every
you.
interview out there. You're awesome. And also we don't start this way. We learn it. Like there
Mm-hmm.
is those 10 videos, there's 15 videos, 20 videos where we're learning what it takes to interview people through, whatever the means are, whether it's YouTube or written interviews, whatever it is. We learn those skills.
Yep.
So huge hands up to you guys that are wanting to take that on.
Mm-hmm.
So the last kind of question I have for you is based on your experience with authors and chatting with them all the time. Who's somebody that you would recommend I talk with? I know Ken Liu. That's on both of our radars, so we'll keep him out
Mm.
of this one.
Another interview that sticks out to me as had really insightful answers and very engaging was Evan Winter, the
Oh
author of
yeah.
Rage of Dragons behind me.
Mm-hmm.
He I still remember some of his answers to my questions to this day. He really
Wow.
thought about his responses and gave really quality ones. He was also a delight to work with behind the scenes. Just a fantastic overall human. And then another one would be Tad Williams.
Ooh, wow, dude. Wow. I didn't know you had Tad Williams on.
Pinch me moment. Tell me
That's
about it.
awesome.
But yeah, he is, again, more generous with his time than you would expect someone of his caliber to be. No holds barred. We'll talk about his life and his inspirations and just the reflective nature he was able to provide on the fantasy genre in general because of all the experience that Williams has.
Wow.
It's just a fantastic interview. And it was a fresh perspective on Tolkien as well, because yeah, Tolkien was one of Williams's main inspirations, but his work is more in conversation with Tolkien rather than following in his footsteps. And hearing him talk about that was fascinating. So I would say he was another fantastic interview.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful answers. Oh my gosh.
And just for indie, I think you've already talked to Crystal Matar, right? But Legacy of the Bright Elf, yeah.
She's a
just one of my, I just have to scream about that book whenever
she's awesome, right? Yeah.
She's
open, like she's so like, I don't know, it was a rewarding talk to her as far as anything you wanted to go into, whether it's like hard times, good times, and kind of her inspiration. So yeah, definitely. I would love to reach out to those two authors that you named previously. See, so Taylor, I just wanted to say thank you because we finally made this happen, and I knew it was going to be a wonderful conversation, and it has been. So it's been so much fun, and I just really appreciate you lending a little time to the channel to come on and talk.
Not at all. Thank you for having me. You know, time zones are hard. Life's busy, you know, so I appreciate when we can make the stars align and make it happen. So it truly was an honor to come on. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's been a blast. So all y'all that were here commenting, you left. So I've been over here watching your comments, of course. And it's some of my favorite times during an interview, just kind of checking out the dialogue between the chatters, and you make it special. So thank you guys for being here. For those that will watch it during the replay, thank you just as much. Tomorrow, I have Alexander Darwin, the author of Combat Codes, coming on. And Luke, I hope I'm saying his name right. Tarzian of Adjacent Monsters and Vulture. He's a self-pub author. Alexander Darwin's through Orbit Books. So let's say 3:30 tomorrow is Alexander Darwin, and 8:30 tomorrow is Luke Tarzian. So I would love it if you tuned in. So until next time, y'all, thank you so much. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.